snow fell heavy that Christmas Eve, coating the city streets in a blanket of white that muffled the sound of hurried footsteps. Nathan ran through the cold, his breath forming clouds in the frozen air, clutching a small wrapped package against his chest. The gift was nothing expensive, just something he could afford on a mechanic's salary, but it was wrapped with care, the corners folded precisely the way his daughter had shown him. He was late, terribly late. The blind date his best friend had arranged was supposed to start 40 minutes ago, and with each passing second, Nathan felt the weight of his inadequacy pressing harder against his ribs. The coffee shop glowed warm through the frosted windows, its interior nearly empty now as the evening stretched toward night. Inside, by the window overlooking the snow-covered street, sat a young woman in a white dress that seemed to capture and reflect the soft lights around her. Her hands rested in her lap, perfectly still. Her legs, encased in elegant boots, remained motionless atop the footrests of a sleek wheelchair. She gazed out at the falling snow with an expression that held neither hope nor disappointment, just a distant kind of watching, as if she had learned long ago not to expect anything from the world. This was Catherine, 27 years old, chief executive officer of a tech company whose name appeared regularly in business journals. Beautiful in a way that made people stop and stare, then quickly look away when they noticed the chair. Intelligent enough to have built an empire before 30. And lonely enough that even the glow of success felt cold against her skin. When Nathan finally pushed through the door, snow melting in his dark hair and apology written across his face, their eyes met across the near-empty room. In that moment, two worlds that should never have touched, one of struggle and simplicity, one of power and isolation, collided in the warm, coffee-scented air of a Christmas Eve that would change everything. Nathan had never wanted this date. For 6 years, since his wife left when their daughter was just a baby, he had focused entirely on being enough for Emma. Enough father, enough mother, enough provider, enough love to fill the gaps left by abandonment. He worked long hours at the auto repair shop on the edge of town, came home smelling of grease and metal, and spent his evenings reading stories and checking homework, and pretending that their small apartment was a castle where nothing bad could ever reach them. He was 32 but looked older, his hands calloused and scarred from years of working with machinery. His face held a gentle quality despite the exhaustion that lived in the corners of his eyes. He spoke softly, laughed easily with his daughter, and had long ago accepted that romance was something that happened to other people. People who had time and money, and something more to offer than a tired smile and a second-hand couch. But James, his best friend since high school, had refused to accept this quiet resignation. 3 weeks before Christmas, over beers at their usual corner bar, James had cornered him with the kind of determination that came from genuine concern. Nathan needed to try, James insisted. Just once. Just one evening to remember that he was still a man, not just a father, that somewhere out there might be someone who could see past the grease under his fingernails to the kindness in his heart. Nathan had agreed only to make James stop talking. He had no expectations, no hope, really. Just a vague sense of obligation to a friend who cared too much. Catherine, on the other hand, had built her entire life around the absence of expectation. 4 years ago, at 23, she had been a different person, confident, mobile, engaged to a man who promised forever. Then came the accident. A drunk driver, a moment of impact, and everything changed. When she woke in the hospital, the doctors explained with clinical precision that her spine had been damaged. She would walk again with extensive therapy, they said at first. Then the prognosis shifted. Possibly walk, might walk, probably not walk. Finally, the truth settled in like winter. She would spend her life in wheels. Her fiancé lasted 3 months. He tried to be supportive, tried to adapt. But she could see the pity and discomfort in his eyes every time he looked at her. One night, he admitted he could not imagine the future they had planned with her like this. The words felt like a second accident. This one to her heart instead of her spine. So she did what made sense. She stopped letting people close. She poured everything into her company, into building something that could not betray her. She became known for her brilliant mind and her cold demeanor. Employees respected her. Competitors feared her. But no one really knew her. Her best friend Sarah had been pushing for this blind date for months. "Just try," Sarah said. "Meet someone new. Let someone see you as a person, not as a CEO or a wheelchair or a tragic story." Catherine had finally agreed, partly to silence Sarah's persistence, partly because something in her still remembered what it felt like to want connection. She chose a white dress because white felt clean, uncomplicated. She arrived exactly on time because punctuality was one thing she could still control. And when 40 minutes passed with no sign of her date, she told herself she was not disappointed because disappointment required hope. And she had learned not to carry that particular weight. But she stayed. She did not know why, except that leaving would mean returning to her empty penthouse, where everything was accessible and nothing was warm. So she stayed and watched the snow, and told herself she would leave in 5 more minutes. Then 5 more. Then 5 more. Nathan had planned everything carefully that evening. He would take the bus downtown, arrive 15 minutes early, order a coffee, and try not to look as out of place as he felt. But the universe had other plans. The bus broke down 6 blocks from his stop. The driver announced repairs would take at least 30 minutes. Nathan looked at his phone, saw the time, felt panic rise in his chest like cold water, and started running. He ran through streets he did not know, past decorated storefronts and carolers and couples walking hand in hand. His jacket was too thin for the weather. His shoes were not made for running. The gift in his pocket bumped against his hip with each step, and he worried it was getting crushed, getting ruined, becoming just another thing he could not get right. Twice he almost stopped. Twice he almost turned around and went home. Who was he kidding? What kind of woman would want a man who showed up an hour late, sweating and breathless, with nothing to offer but excuses? He thought about Emma, asleep at James's house for the evening, her last words before he left echoing in his memory. "Daddy, maybe she'll like you for real, not for pretend." Children believed in magic. Children believed that good things could happen to good people. Maybe, just this once, he could borrow some of that faith. When he finally reached the coffee shop, his lungs burned and his legs shook. Through the window, he saw her alone by the window. Impossibly beautiful. Impossibly still. For a moment, he could not move. She looked like she belonged in a different world. One where men wore suits instead of work jackets. Where hands were clean and futures were certain. But he had run too far to turn back now. He pushed open the door, and a small bell chimed overhead. Catherine turned at the sound. Her eyes found his across the room, and Nathan watched something shift in her expression, not anger, not even annoyance, but a kind of surprised curiosity, as if she had not expected him to exist at all. He walked toward her table, each step feeling like a small act of courage. Snow melted in his hair and dripped onto his shoulders. His face was flushed from running. When he reached her table, he opened his mouth to apologize, but the words tangled in his throat. "I'm so sorry," he finally managed, his voice rough from breathing cold air. "The bus broke down, and I ran. But I know that's not an excuse. I'm really, incredibly sorry." Catherine studied him for a long moment. She had prepared herself for many possibilities. Rudeness, pity, awkward politeness. But not this breathless sincerity. Not this man who looked like he had run through a snowstorm because being late to meet her actually mattered to him. "You came," she said simply. "Of course I came." Nathan pulled out the chair across from her, then hesitated. "May I sit?" She nodded, and he collapsed into the seat with a sigh of relief. Up close, she was even more striking: sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that seemed to see through pretense, a mouth set in a careful line that suggested she smiled rarely and meant it even less. "I'm Nathan," he said, extending his hand across the table. "Catherine." Her hand was cool and smooth, her grip surprisingly firm. The handshake lasted exactly the appropriate length of time, professional, distant. An uncomfortable silence settled between them. Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out the gift, now slightly damp and wrinkled from his journey. He set it on the table between them, suddenly aware of how shabby it looked. "I brought you something," he said. "It's not much. I mean, it's really not much, but it's Christmas Eve, and I thought." He trailed off, feeling foolish. Catherine looked at the small package, as if she had never seen a wrapped gift before. "You brought me a present? We've never met. I know. It's weird, right? James said I should bring flowers, but flowers die, and that seemed depressing for a first meeting. So I got you this instead." He pushed the package closer to her. "You don't have to open it now if you don't want to," but her fingers were already working at the wrapping paper, carefully, methodically. Inside was a small snow globe, the kind sold at drugstores for $9.99. Inside the globe, a simple scene: a park bench, a street lamp, snow falling on an empty path. "It's a snow globe," Nathan said unnecessarily, his voice anxious. "I know it's cheap. I don't have a lot to spare. But I saw it. And I thought, Christmas is about remembering that even when everything feels cold, there's still something warm to hold on to. Something small that fits in your hand and reminds you that beauty exists." He stopped, embarrassed. "Sorry. That probably sounds stupid." Catherine shook the globe gently, watching the artificial snow swirl and settle. When she looked up, her eyes were brighter than before, though no tears fell. "No one has given me a snow globe before," she said quietly. "Well, now someone has." She set the globe on the table where the light caught it, making the scene inside glow. For the first time since he arrived, she smiled, a small thing. Tentative, but real. "Thank you, Nathan, who arrives late and runs through snowstorms." "Thank you, Catherine, who waits." The barista approached their table, politely informing them that the shop would be closing in 20 minutes. Catherine glanced at the clock, then back at Nathan. "There's a restaurant 2 blocks from here," she said. "It's open late on Christmas Eve. Would you like to continue this conversation somewhere warmer?" Nathan thought about his bank account, the bills waiting at home, the careful budget that left almost nothing for spontaneous dinners at restaurants. Then he thought about Emma's words. "Maybe she'll like you for real." "I'd like that," he said. "But I should be honest, I can't afford anywhere fancy." "The place I'm thinking of isn't fancy," Catherine said, though they both knew she was lying. "And besides, I'm inviting you. My treat. I can't let you pay." "Why not?" "Because I'm the man, and men pay for dates." "This is a blind date arranged by well-meaning friends," Catherine said. "Neither of us asked for this, so we're splitting it, or I'm paying, or we're not going. Your choice." Nathan studied her face and saw no pity there. No condescension, just straightforward honesty. He realized that accepting her offer was not about his pride, but about respecting her agency to make her own choices. "Splitting it," he said. "I can manage that." She smiled again, wider this time. "Then let's go before we freeze to death in here." The restaurant was indeed nicer than anywhere Nathan usually ate, but Catherine had chosen wisely. It was warm and intimate without being intimidating, with soft lighting and a menu that did not require a translator. She navigated her wheelchair through the space with practiced efficiency. And Nathan learned to walk beside her rather than behind, to hold doors but not to hover. They ordered simple food, pasta, wine, bread warm from the oven. And they talked. Slowly at first, trading the basic facts of their lives like cards in a careful game, where they grew up, what they did for work, how they ended up in this city on this particular Christmas Eve. Nathan told her about Emma, how she was 6 years old and missing her front teeth and obsessed with dinosaurs. How she slept with a stuffed triceratops named Henry. How she asked questions constantly about everything, and he had learned to say, "I don't know. Let's look it up together," instead of pretending he had all the answers. "You sound like a good father," Catherine said. "I try. Some days I'm better at it than others." Nathan took a sip of wine. What about you? Do you have family here? My parents live in Boston. We talk on holidays. Her tone suggested there was more to that story, but she did not elaborate. I have a brother in Seattle. We're not close. That must be lonely. I have my company. I have employees who depend on me. That's a kind of family. Is it enough? The question hung between them, too personal for a first date but somehow necessary. Catherine set down her fork and met his eyes. No, she said. It's not enough, but it's safe. Nathan understood. Safety was something he had built his entire life around since Emma was born. Safety meant no risk, no chance of being hurt or disappointed or left behind again. But safety also meant no possibility of something more. Can I ask about the wheelchair? He said. Or is that too personal? Most people don't ask. They just stare or pretend not to notice. Catherine's voice was neutral, factual. But yes, you can ask. What happened? She told him about the accident 4 years ago, the drunk driver, the surgery, the months of rehabilitation, and hope that slowly transformed into acceptance. She told him about her ex-fiancé, about the way he looked at her after the accident, not with love but with obligation and discomfort. He left, she said. And I don't blame him. Not really. He didn't sign up for this. He signed up to love you, Nathan said quietly. That means all of you. Not just the parts that are convenient. That's a nice idea. But most people can't handle it. They see the chair, and they see limitation. They see burden. They see something broken that they're supposed to fix, and when they realize they can't, they leave. She paused. I learned it's easier not to let anyone close enough to leave in the first place. That sounds incredibly lonely. It is. She met his eyes. But at least I'm not surprised anymore. Nathan wanted to tell her that not everyone would leave. That some people understood that love was not about perfection, but about showing up, about staying, even when things were hard. But he had only known her for 2 hours. And words like that would sound empty, like promises he had no right to make. Instead, he said, I think you're one of the bravest people I've ever met. Catherine laughed a short, sharp sound. Brave? I hide in a penthouse and run a company from behind a desk. There's nothing brave about that. You came tonight, Nathan said. You could have stayed home where everything is safe and familiar. But you came. You sat in that coffee shop for 40 minutes, waiting for a stranger who might not show up. You invited me to dinner. You're telling me things that clearly hurt to talk about. That's brave. She looked at him for a long moment, and he wondered if he had said too much, pushed too hard. But then her expression softened. Maybe, she said. Or maybe I'm just tired of being alone. I know that feeling. Outside, the snow had intensified, transforming the city into something from a postcard. When they finished dinner, Catherine insisted on calling her driver to take Nathan home. He protested until she pointed out that the buses had probably stopped running, and he would freeze trying to walk home in this weather. In the back of the warm car, with the city lights sliding past the windows, they sat in comfortable silence. Nathan realized he did not want the evening to end. Somewhere between the coffee shop and the restaurant, between the snow globe and the confession, something had shifted. He felt lighter, more himself than he had in years. Thank you for tonight, he said, as the car pulled up to his building, a modest apartment complex with flickering hallway lights and a broken intercom. Thank you for running through a snowstorm to meet me, Catherine said. Would you? Nathan hesitated, afraid of the answer. Would you want to do this again sometime? Catherine smiled. And this time, it reached her eyes. Yes. I would like that. He climbed out of the car, then turned back. Merry Christmas, Catherine. Merry Christmas, Nathan. He watched the car pull away, taking her back to whatever perfect penthouse she lived in, and felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Hope. Small and fragile, but real. Emma was already asleep when Nathan picked her up from James's house the next morning. She stirred when he lifted her, wrapping her small arms around his neck. "Did you find a nice lady, Daddy?" she mumbled, half dreaming. "I think I did, sweetheart." "Is she pretty?" "Very pretty. But more than that, she's interesting. She's smart and honest and a little bit sad." "Like Snow?" Nathan smiled, carrying his daughter to the car. "Yeah, baby. Like Snow." On Christmas morning, while Emma tore into her modest pile of presents, Nathan's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. He opened it and found a simple text. "Thank you for making me forget about my legs for one evening. For making me feel like a person instead of a condition. Merry Christmas." He saved the number under Catherine and replied, "Thank you for waiting. For giving me a chance, even though I was late. Merry Christmas." They texted sporadically over the next week. Nothing profound, just small observations about the weather, recommendations for movies, a photo Emma drew of a princess in a wheelchair that Nathan sent without asking permission first. Catherine responded with a laughing emoji, the first time Nathan had seen her use one. "Tell Emma I love it," she wrote. "I haven't been a princess in a long time." Then, a week after their first meeting, Nathan received a service call for a malfunctioning copy machine at a corporate office downtown. The address seemed familiar, but he did not make the connection until he walked into the sleek glass building and saw the company name on the wall. Avalon Tech Solutions, CEO, Catherine Morrison. His stomach dropped. She had not mentioned being CEO. She had said she ran a company, but he had imagined something small, manageable. This was a tech giant with hundreds of employees and a valuation in the billions. He stood in the lobby, holding his tool bag, feeling impossibly out of place in his work uniform. The receptionist directed him to the 4th floor, where the broken machine waited. He took the elevator up, his mind spinning. Why had she not told him? Was she embarrassed of him? Testing him? The 4th floor was all glass walls and modern furniture, everything white and chrome and expensive. Employees moved past in tailored suits, speaking in the confident tones of people who belonged. Nathan found the copy machine in a supply room and got to work, grateful for the familiar task that let him stop thinking. He was elbow deep in the machine's inner workings when he heard the soft whir of wheels on carpet. He knew without looking who it was. "You came late again," Catherine said behind him. Nathan pulled himself out of the machine and turned to face her. She wore a black suit that probably cost more than his monthly rent, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. She looked every inch the CEO, commanding and untouchable. But her eyes held that same warmth he remembered from the restaurant. "I didn't know this was your company," he said. "I know. I should have told you." She wheeled closer, stopping just in front of him. "I wanted one evening where someone saw me without seeing all of this first." She gestured at the office around them. "Does it change things?" "I don't know yet," Nathan admitted. "I fix copy machines for a living. You run a tech empire. That's not exactly an equal playing field. I don't want a playing field. I want someone who sees me." She reached out and touched his hand where it rested on his tool bag. A brief contact that sent electricity up his arm. "Someone who gives me snow globes instead of jewelry. Someone who shows up even when it's hard." Nathan looked down at their hands, hers smooth and manicured, his scarred and stained with grease that no amount of scrubbing could fully remove. Two different worlds. But maybe that did not matter as much as he thought. "The machine's fixed," he said. "But I could stick around a while." "If you want," she smiled. "I want. There's a coffee place on the 1st floor. Much worse than where we met, but it's convenient. Convenience is underrated." They rode the elevator down together, and Nathan noticed the stares from employees who had never seen their CEO wheel herself to coffee with the repairman. Catherine noticed too, but she ignored them with practiced ease. Over coffee that was, as promised, significantly worse than their first meeting, they talked about everything and nothing. She asked about Emma, about his work, about what he did on weekends. He asked about her company, about what it was like to be in charge, about whether she ever missed being able to just walk away from her responsibilities. "Every day," she admitted. "But not just physically. I miss the freedom to fail, to not have hundreds of people depending on my decisions. I miss being unknown. You could always quit. Start over. Could I? Can any of us really start over? Or do we just carry everything with us wherever we go? I think we carry it, Nathan said. But maybe the right person can help us carry it better. She reached across the table and took his hand, right there in the middle of her company's coffee shop where anyone could see. Her palm was warm against his. Would you like to meet Emma? He asked. Really meet her? I mean, not just hear stories. I would love that. 2 weeks later, on New Year's Eve, Nathan brought Emma to Catherine's penthouse for a small celebration. Emma was shy at first, hiding behind her father's legs. But Catherine won her over by showing her the snow globe from their first date, which now sat on a shelf in the living room surrounded by expensive art. Daddy gave you that? Emma asked, her eyes wide. He did. It's my favorite thing in this apartment. More than the big TV? Much more than the big TV. Emma considered this seriously. Then, climbed onto the couch next to Catherine's wheelchair. Can you really not walk at all, Emma? Nathan started to intervene, but Catherine waved him off. It's okay. She's curious. Catherine turned to Emma. No, I can't walk. My legs don't work like yours do. But I can do lots of other things. Like what? Like run a company. And use a computer really fast. And make hot chocolate. Can you make some now? Catherine laughed. Yes. I can make some now. While Catherine prepared hot chocolate in her accessible kitchen, Emma whispered to her father, I like her, Daddy. She's not sad Snow anymore. She's happy Snow. Nathan had no idea what that meant, but he understood the sentiment. Over the past few weeks, he had watched Catherine slowly unfold, becoming warmer and more open. She laughed more easily. She touched him casually, a hand on his arm. Her shoulder brushing his. She sent him pictures of things that made her think of him. A dinosaur toy she saw in a store window, an article about classic cars, a sunset from her office. As midnight approached, they stood on Catherine's balcony, Nathan and Emma on their feet. Catherine wrapped in a blanket in her chair, watching fireworks bloom across the sky. When the clock struck 12, Emma was already asleep in Catherine's guest room, worn out from excitement and sugar. New year, Nathan said softly. New beginning, Catherine replied. He bent down and kissed her, gentle and careful, and she reached up to pull him closer. When they separated, she was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. Hey, he said, alarmed. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. And I forgot what that felt like. I forgot that someone could touch me without hesitation, could kiss me without pity, could see past this chair to me. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm not crying because I'm sad. I'm crying because I'm not. Nathan pulled a chair over and sat beside her, taking both her hands in his. I see you, Catherine. I see how strong you are. How smart. How you build things that matter. How you're learning to trust again even though you're scared. I see all of it. And I think you're extraordinary. I'm terrified. She whispered. Terrified that you'll wake up one day and realize this is too hard. That you'll want someone who can walk beside you, not roll. Someone without complications. Everyone has complications. Mine is that I'm broke and work too much and barely finished high school. I eat cereal for dinner half the time. I can't give you fancy restaurants or vacations or any of the things you're used to. I don't want those things. I want honesty. I want someone who shows up. I want someone who gives me snow globes and means it. Then I'm your guy. 3 months later, Catherine's company held its annual shareholders meeting. As CEO, she was expected to give a presentation about the year's achievements and future projections. She had given hundreds of these presentations, always projecting confidence and control from behind a podium that hid her wheelchair from the audience. This year, she did something different. She rolled to the front of the stage, fully visible, and stood up. Not through miracle or magic, but through the assistance of a standing frame, a device that held her upright through braces and supports. It was uncomfortable and temporary, but it allowed her to address the crowd at eye level. The room fell silent. Everyone knew about the accident, about her disability, but she had always kept it private, professional, out of sight. 4 years ago, she began, I lost the ability to walk. I thought I had lost everything that mattered. But what I actually lost was the illusion that my value came from being perfect, from being whole, in the way society defines wholeness. This company succeeded not because I could walk, but because I could think, because I could lead, because I refused to let limitations define me. She paused, her eyes finding Nathan in the audience where he sat in the back row, uncomfortable in a borrowed suit. He gave her a small nod of encouragement. Recently, someone taught me that the most important thing we can do is show up. Not perfectly, not without fear, but honestly, with whatever we have to offer, however small that might seem. That lesson has changed everything. Halfway through the presentation, the standing frame malfunctioned. The support gave way, and Catherine fell, not far, not dangerously, but enough that a collective gasp went through the room. Security moved toward the stage, but before they could reach her, Nathan was there. He had jumped up from his seat and run to the front, ignoring protocol and propriety. And now he caught her as she fell, steadying her gently. "I've got you," he said, quiet enough that only she could hear. "I know," she replied. He helped her back into her wheelchair, his hands steady and sure. The audience watched in silence, unsure how to react. Then Catherine picked up her microphone and said, "This is Nathan. He fixes machines when they break. He also fixes people, though he doesn't know it. And he has taught me that falling is not failing, as long as someone cares enough to catch you." She finished her presentation from her chair, and the applause when she concluded was genuine and warm. Afterward, in the parking garage as they prepared to leave, Nathan was quiet. "I'm sorry I ran up there," he finally said. "I should have let your people handle it. I just saw you falling, and I couldn't not. Don't apologize." Catherine reached up and pulled him down to her level, kissing him hard. "Don't ever apologize for catching me." A week later, Catherine called Nathan with news. Her company was expanding, opening a new facility that would need a head of maintenance, someone to oversee all the technical systems, manage a team, ensure everything ran smoothly. The position paid 3 times what Nathan made now, and included benefits, vacation time, and a retirement plan. "I want you to interview for it," she said. Nathan's first instinct was excitement. His second was suspicion. "Is this a real job? Or are you creating a position for me?" "It's a real job. We need someone. But yes, I suggested you as a candidate. I can't take a job just because I'm dating the CEO. You wouldn't be. You'd be taking it because you're qualified. You're brilliant with machines. You're good with people. And you work harder than anyone I know. But if it makes you uncomfortable, don't interview. I'll hire someone else." Nathan thought about it for 3 days. He talked to James, who told him not to be an idiot. He talked to Emma, who said, "If Miss Catherine thinks you can do it, you probably can." Finally, he called Catherine back. "I'll interview," he said, "but if I get the job, it has to be because I earned it. Not because of us." Agreed. The interview was with the head of operations, not Catherine. It was rigorous and technical, and Nathan left uncertain. But 2 weeks later, he got the call. The job was his, on his last day at the repair shop. His boss, a gruff man who rarely showed emotion, shook his hand and said, "You're too good for this place anyway. Go make something of yourself." Christmas came around again, 1 year after their first meeting. Nathan and Emma moved into a better apartment. Not a mansion, but comfortable. with heat that worked and windows that closed properly. Catherine spent more time there than at her penthouse. She loved the ordinariness of it, the dinosaur drawings on the fridge, the sound of Emma practicing piano in the next room. On Christmas Eve, they returned to the same coffee shop where they had first met. It was their tradition now. This one night a year when they sat by the window and remembered. "You were so late," Catherine said, her hand wrapped around a mug of cocoa. "You waited," Nathan replied. "I almost didn't. But you did." Emma was with them this time, coloring at the table while snow fell outside exactly as it had 1 year ago. She looked up suddenly and asked, "Daddy, are you going to marry Miss Catherine?" Both adults froze. They had not discussed it, had not wanted to rush, had been content to let things unfold naturally. But now the question hung in the air. Impossible to ignore. "Would you want me to?" Nathan asked his daughter. "Duh," Emma said, with the confidence of a 7-year-old. "She makes you smile, the real smile, not the pretend one. And she lets me paint her fingernails even though she has important meetings. Those are good reasons," Nathan agreed. He turned to Catherine. "What do you think?" "I think," Catherine said slowly, "that 1 year ago, I had given up on this. On feeling wanted, on believing someone could love me, without seeing me as a burden or a project or something broken to fix. And then, a man ran through a snowstorm because being late to meet me mattered to him. And he gave me a cheap snow globe that I treasure more than anything else I own. And he catches me when I fall. But he doesn't treat me like I'm fragile." She paused. "So yes. I think, yes." Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring, simple, inexpensive, but chosen with care. "I was planning to wait until tonight, after Emma went to sleep," he said, "but I guess now works too." He opened the box and held it out to her. "Catherine Morrison, will you marry me?" "Nathan, I don't even know your last name." "It's Parker. Nathan Parker. And I promise, I'll try not to be late to the wedding." She laughed and cried at the same time, and said yes. They married in the spring. A small ceremony in the coffee shop where they met. Emma was the flower girl. James was the best man. And Sarah cried through the entire thing. Catherine wore a white dress and sat in her wheelchair, and when the officiant said they could kiss, Nathan bent down to meet her and whispered, "I see you. I see you too," she whispered back. Their life together was not a fairy tale. Some days were hard. Catherine had bad days when her body hurt and her spirit was low. Nathan had days when he felt inadequate, when the gap between their backgrounds seemed too wide to bridge. But they had learned that love was not about perfection or ease. It was about showing up, about catching each other, about choosing, every single day, to see past the surface to the person underneath. One night, 2 years after their wedding, Nathan came home to find Catherine in tears. Not sad tears, frustrated ones. She had been working with a new physical therapist, trying a new treatment protocol, hoping for even small improvements. "It's not working," she said. "Nothing changes. I'm still stuck like this." Nathan sat beside her and took her hands. "You're not stuck. You're exactly where you are, and where you are is enough. But what if it's never better? What if this is it forever?" "Then this is it forever," he said simply. "And we'll handle it. Like we handle everything else." Together, she leaned against him, exhausted from fighting her own body. "I just want to walk down the street with you. Hold your hand like a normal couple. We do hold hands. We are normal. Our normal just looks different than someone else's normal." He kissed the top of her head, and for what it's worth, I wouldn't change a single thing about how we met or who we are. Not the wheelchair, not the struggle, not any of it. Because all of it led to this. You're just saying that. I'm not. If you could walk tomorrow, I'd be happy for you. But I wouldn't love you more. I don't love you despite the chair. Catherine, I love you. Period. The chair is just part of the package, like my terrible jokes and the fact that I burn toast every single morning. She laughed through her tears. You really do burn toast every morning. See? We all have our limitations. Emma wandered into the room, now 9 years old and perceptive beyond her years. She climbed onto the couch on Catherine's other side and said, "Mom, are you sad again?" Catherine had given Emma permission to call her mom 6 months ago, and it still made her heart clench every time she heard it. "A little bit, sweetheart. But I'm okay. Daddy's right, you know. You're perfect how you are. My friend Olivia has a mom who can walk, but she's mean and never comes to school events. You come to everything. You help with homework. You make the best pancakes. Who cares about walking? Olivia's mom makes terrible pancakes?" Catherine asked, wiping her eyes. "The worst. They're like eating cardboard." "Well then, I'm clearly superior." They sat together on the couch, the three of them, while outside the city moved through another ordinary evening. Inside, they had built something extraordinary, not perfect, not without pain, but real and warm and theirs. Years passed. Emma grew into a teenager with her father's kindness and Catherine's sharp mind. She talked about becoming an engineer, about building devices that could help people with disabilities. Catherine's company continued to thrive, and Nathan moved up to director of operations, earning respect that had nothing to do with who he was married to and everything to do with his competence and integrity. They had their traditions. Every Christmas Eve, they returned to the coffee shop. Every New Year's, they stayed home and made hot chocolate. Every spring, they celebrated their anniversary by doing something neither of them had done before: a cooking class, a pottery workshop, a day trip to somewhere new. They collected experiences instead of things, moments instead of milestones. Catherine never regained the ability to walk. Some days that bothered her. Most days it did not. She had learned that her worth was not tied to her mobility, that her life was not less because it was lived on wheels. She had learned that the right person did not see disability as something to overcome or ignore, but simply as one aspect of a complete human being. Nathan never stopped seeing her. Even after years of marriage, he still looked at her with the same attention he had given her that first night, really looking, really seeing. He noticed when she was tired before she said anything. He knew when she needed space and when she needed closeness. He had learned the language of her, and she had learned his. On their 10th Christmas Eve together, they sat in the same coffee shop, now with Emma and her girlfriend, and watched the snow fall, just as it had a decade ago. The snow globe from their first date sat on the table between them, battered from years of moving and handling but still intact. "You know what I was thinking about today?" Catherine said. "How close I came to leaving that night. I almost gave up and went home. I almost turned around when the bus broke down," Nathan admitted. "I was so sure you wouldn't want anything to do with me. We were both idiots. Lucky idiots." Emma looked up from her phone. "Are you two being sappy again?" "Always," Catherine said. "It's kind of our thing." Gross. But she was smiling. And when her girlfriend reached over to take her hand, Catherine and Nathan exchanged a look. Their daughter had learned what they had learned, that love was not about perfection or presentation, but about seeing and being seen. The coffee shop closed, and they went out into the snow. Nathan pushed Catherine's chair through the streets they had walked and rolled together for 10 years. Past the restaurant where they had their second date, past the building where her company had started in a single rented floor and now occupied 12, past the park where they had gotten married. At one point, Catherine reached up and caught Nathan's hand where it rested on her chair. He squeezed gently, and she squeezed back a language they had developed over years, a way of saying "I'm here, and I know, and I love you" without words. When they got home, after Emma and her girlfriend had gone to bed, Catherine and Nathan sat by the window, watching the snow continue to fall. The city glowed with Christmas lights, and somewhere out there, other people were living their own stories, some meeting for the first time, some saying goodbye, some simply existing in the quiet spaces between. "Do you ever wish things had been different?" Catherine asked. "Easier?" Nathan thought about it honestly. Sometimes I wish you didn't have to deal with pain, that the world was more accessible, that people didn't stare or make assumptions. But do I wish we had met differently? That you weren't in a chair when I ran into that coffee shop? No, because I don't know if I would have seen you the same way. I don't know if you would have given me a chance. Everything that happened, the accident, the heartbreak, the years alone, all of it, made you who you are, and who you are is exactly who I love. That's a very romantic way of saying you like broken things. You're not broken. You're complete. You're just assembled differently than some people expect. She turned to look at him, this man who had run through a snowstorm for a blind date, who had given her a $9 snow globe and meant it, who had spent 10 years proving that love was not about grand gestures but about small, consistent choices to stay and see and care. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For being late that night. For running anyway. For waiting with me even when I wasn't sure I wanted anyone to wait. For seeing past the chair to me. For catching me. For staying. Thank you for waiting," Nathan replied. "For giving me a chance when you had every reason not to. For teaching me that strength comes in a million forms. For letting me be part of your life. For loving my daughter like she's yours. For staying too." Outside, the snow fell heavier, covering the city in white silence. Inside, two people who had once been strangers sat together in the warm darkness, their hands intertwined, their hearts beating the same quiet rhythm. In the end, their story was not about overcoming obstacles or fixing what was broken. It was not about inspiration, or tragedy, or dramatic transformation. It was simpler and more profound than that. It was about two people who were brave enough to be seen, patient enough to wait, and committed enough to stay. It was about recognizing that love was not found in perfection but in presence, in showing up, again and again, through snow and struggle and ordinary days. And it was about remembering that sometimes the most important journeys begin when we are late, when we are lost, when we are certain that we have nothing to offer and no reason to hope. Sometimes magic happens not because we are ready, but because we choose to run through the storm anyway. The snow globe sat on the shelf across the room, its tiny scene forever frozen in that moment of beauty. But unlike the globe, their story was not static. It continued to unfold with each passing day, each shared meal, each quiet evening, each crisis weathered, each joy celebrated. It was messy and complicated and real, and it was theirs. On Christmas morning, Emma woke them early as she had every year since she was small. Now, she was nearly grown. But some traditions remained. They gathered around the tree, modest compared to what Catherine could afford, but decorated with ornaments, collected over years of being a family. There were dinosaurs from Emma's childhood, elegant glass balls that Catherine contributed, homemade clay shapes that Nathan had attempted one year with disastrous results. They opened presents slowly, savoring each one. For Catherine, Nathan had commissioned a painting of the coffee shop window as it looked that first night, with snow falling and a single figure visible inside. For Nathan, Catherine had arranged for the old repair shop where he used to work to be renovated and turned into a community center that offered free job training in technical skills. For Emma, they had pooled resources to fund her first year studying biomedical engineering. "You guys are ridiculous," Emma said, wiping tears from her eyes. "I'm going to cry all day now." "Good," Catherine said. "Crying means you're feeling something real." After presents, they made breakfast together, Nathan burning the toast as always. Catherine directing operations from her chair, Emma setting the table and stealing bites of fruit. It was ordinary and perfect, exactly like hundreds of other mornings they had shared. Later, as they sat around the table, Emma raised her glass of orange juice. "I want to make a toast." "You're 17, Nathan said. "You can't make toasts. I'm making one anyway. To you too. For showing me what love actually looks like. For proving that it's not about having everything perfect or being what other people expect. It's about choosing each other, every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. She paused. And for giving me a family that's weird and imperfect and exactly right. They clinked glasses, juice and coffee and tea, and Catherine felt the familiar tightness in her chest that meant she was about to cry. But these were good tears, the kind that came from being so full of gratitude that it had to spill over somehow. "I love you both," she said, "more than I ever thought I could love anything." "We love you too, Mom," Emma said. "Love you," Nathan added, his hand finding Catherine's under the table. Outside, the world continued its complicated spin. People struggled and triumphed, and loved, and lost. But here, in this small apartment with its second-hand furniture and its lopsided Christmas tree, 3 people had built something that would last, not because it was perfect, but because they had chosen to build it together, brick by brick, day by day, through snow and sun and all the seasons in between. That evening, after Emma had gone to visit friends, Nathan and Catherine found themselves alone. They sat together in the dimming light, watching the last of the Christmas day fade into night. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night?" Catherine asked. "About holding on to something warm, even when everything feels cold. I remember thinking I sounded like an idiot. You sounded like someone who understood. Someone who had been cold and found warmth and wanted to share it." She reached for the snow globe, which now lived on their bookshelf. "I kept this because it reminded me that beauty could fit in your hand. That magic could cost $9.99. That the most valuable things were often the simplest. It's still my best gift," Nathan said. "Everything after has just been trying to match that moment. You've matched it 1,000 times over. Every morning when you make terrible toast. Every time you catch me without making it a big deal. Every moment you choose to stay when leaving would be easier. Leaving has never been an option. It's always an option. That's what makes staying meaningful." They sat in comfortable silence as night settled fully around them. 10 years ago, they had been strangers meeting in a coffee shop, separated by circumstance and history and fear. Now they were family, bound by choice and time and the quiet accumulation of shared moments. The city outside blazed with light Christmas decorations still glowing, windows illuminated, cars moving through streets that had been cleared of snow. Somewhere out there, other people were having their first dates, their last dates, their ordinary dates that would become extraordinary in retrospect. Somewhere, someone was running late. Somewhere, someone was waiting. And here, in this small space carved out of the vast, complicated world, 2 people who had found each other against all odds continued the simple, profound work of loving well. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but honestly, completely, with everything they had, because in the end, that was the only magic that mattered, not the magic of transformation or miracle cures, but the magic of recognition, of seeing another person fully and choosing to stay, of being seen and believing you were worth the staying. Of building a life together not despite the hard parts but with them. Woven through like threads in a tapestry, essential to the pattern. The snow globe caught the lamplight, its tiny scene glowing from within. Inside, the bench and the street lamp and the empty path waited, frozen in eternal winter. But outside the globe, in the real world where time moved and hearts beat and love required courage, their story continued ordinary and extraordinary. Simple and profound. Exactly as it should be. "Merry Christmas," the city seemed to whisper. "Merry Christmas to the lost and found, the late and the waiting, the broken and the whole. Merry Christmas to everyone brave enough to run through the storm. Merry Christmas to everyone patient enough to wait. Merry Christmas to anyone who has ever given or received a gift that cost nothing and meant everything." And in that small apartment, as snow began to fall again outside the window, Nathan and Catherine held hands in the darkness and were grateful not for perfection, not for ease, but for this, for each other, for the messy, complicated, beautiful thing they had built together, for love that showed up, for love that stayed, for love that saw and was seen and found that enough.